What's up, you data friends? It's Yanis here and welcome to my channel. This video is an SQL tutorial video for beginners in data analytics and data science. So I have tried to include all the possible queries that you will need to know when starting a new position in data analytics and data science. So we're going to start by explaining how to download and install the SQL Server and the SQL Server Management Studio, which is what we use right now, and then how to create a new database in your SQL Server so we can input our data. Afterwards, we're going to go through some shortcut keys that are very useful. Then we're going to briefly touch on the data types, and then we're going to start our tutorial. So step one, I'm going to show you how to programmatically load the raw data so we can rerun this a lot of times, or we can schedule it. Then we're going to go through the select query and the conditional filtering. Afterwards, how to write subqueries. Then we have the if and case statements in SQL. Moving on, we're going to have the rename, update, replace, insert into, delete, and create new columns. So I'm going to show you how to do all of that. Then we're going to cover the aggregated functions, so how to aggregate data using SQL. And then we're going to have the joins. So I'm going to explain you how joins work. So left join, inner join, full join, cross join, and unions. Then I will show you how to write the code and apply them in SQL. And finally, at the end, I'm going to show you how to create a view so you can summarize data. Right, and before we start this tutorial, let me just say that if you're passionate about data science and data analytics, then please click that like button, subscribe to my channel, and enable notifications for my future videos. Right, starting by downloading and installing the SQL Server, we head over into your browser, we Google SQL Server download, then we click on this link. I'm going to have it in the description too. And then we click over here, the SQL Server on premises. We click on the free trial. This is a 6 months free trial, so you can learn how to use SQL. Over here, we click continue, and then we have to fill in these fields. So I'm going to do ABC, 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 then company size. I'm just going to select random stuff, analyst, work email. I'm just going to put numbers. Sorry, actually, I'm going to do ABC again. Then here, I'm going to put numbers, and country region. I'm going to select UK. Then click continue. We need a work email, so let's do at gmail.com. You see it's wrong, but I think it's going to accept it. We click on download, so I'm going to save it into downloads, click save, and then this is downloaded. Then we want to launch this, click yes. Then we click on the basic, then we click accept. Then we select where we want to install this, click install. And then we need to wait until this is finished. Right, so when the installation of the SQL Server finishes, you're going to see this window over here, which gives us some information. For example, the instance name is what we're going to use in SSMS, which is SQL Server Management Studio, to connect to our server, and also the version, the features, and also the SQL administrators. So that's my desktop, so this current PC. The next step now is to install the SSMS. So we click over here, then we click down here, we save it into our downloads, and then we launch it by double clicking over here. Then we see a pop-up, we click yes, and then we click install. Actually, we need to select the location, and then we click install. And this is going to install the SQL Server Management Studio. Right, now we need to launch the SSMS, so SQL Server Management Studio, and create a new database. Sorry, first we need to connect to our server, and then we need to create a new database. So once you open it, you're going to see this window over here, and in this drop down, the server name, you should see the server you've just installed. So it's going to be this instance name over here. If you don't see anything, then you will need to click on Browse for More, expand the database engine, and you're going to see it down here. So you can select it. I'm actually going to use 10, which is the default I had before, and then click Connect. Once you connect, you're going to see this Object Explorer over here where you're going to see your databases, if you expand them, and also the tables you have within your database. So in your case, all of these should be empty, so no databases and no tables. The next step now is to right-click on databases and create a new database. We're going to name this new database as SQL Tutorials, so SQL Tutorial, and then we are going to click OK. So this is going to create our new database, and if we expand it, we're going to see that we don't have any tables or views or anything in this database. So the next step now is to open a new window by clicking over here, New Query, and start inputting our raw data. First, I'm going to copy over a few things from my existing notebook. So we have some titles, so copy and paste in this new window. And the next step I always do is that I save my query. So you can do File, Save As, and then I'll save it into my downloads as SQL Tutorial, so we don't lose it by accident if the PC crashes or something. Right, so before we load in the raw data, we want to go over the shortcut keys, which are extremely useful when writing code, so you actually might know them. But if you click on Control-C and then Control-V, so Control-C to copy and then paste, you can actually copy and paste stuff very quickly. With Control and X you can cut, and then you can also have the Control and Z, which is the undo, so this goes back to what I had before. And then we also have the F5, which stands for run in SQL. So if you have some code and you click on F5, it's actually going to run stuff. Additionally, the reason it's not throwing any error on this text is because it's not actually code. If I start with the two dashes, so dash dash, then you can see it's commenting out anything else I have in green, which means it's not code. But if I don't have the dash dash, it's actually going to throw me an error. So let's test it. If I remove this and click F5, it's going to run the whole script, and it's throwing me an error because it cannot find anything with this name, or this is not an actual query. So when you want to write a few notes, then always start with dash dash and then your notes. Right, next we have the data types. So before we bring in the data, we can briefly go over them. In SQL, there are 5 main data types that I use a lot. There is probably more than that, but these ones are the main ones. So varchar and nvarchar is used when you have text in the column. So when you're bringing in some data, for example, this data, this column, because it's text, the country, we're going to use varchar or nvarchar. The difference is that the nvarchar accepts special characters and the varchar is not accepting special characters. And the number in the brackets is the number of characters. So for example, if I go back to this column, which we are actually going to bring this in SQL, Afghanistan is more than 10 characters, I assume. How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So if I leave it as 10, then it's not actually going to fit in and it's going to throw me an error. So I always use 100 or 200 here just to be on the safe side. I'm actually going to scroll in a bit, so we make the text larger. Then we have the float, which is used for numbers with decimal places. So for example, here we have decimals, we have decimals, we have decimals. We actually have to use float for these columns. But for these two columns, the population and the area, we don't have any decimal places. So these are integers. So we're going to define the column as integer. And lastly, we have date, which is obviously for dates. Right, next we need to load our raw data, but before we do that, let's explain the raw data. So I have used some international football results from 1872 to 2021 data from Kaggle. So in this data, we have the date, the home team, the away team, the home score, the away score, the tournament, the city, the country, and neutral. And I have also used another file, which is the countries of the world file from Kaggle again. And in this file, we have the country and then some demographic data for that country. So the reason I've used these two files is so we can demonstrate the joins later on by using the country from this file and then the country from this file and combining the data together. Now, if you don't want to download it from Kaggle, I'm going to have both files, so these Excel files, in my GitHub repository, and also I will have the SQL file with the solutions or all the code in case you want to download this file too. Right, going back to our code now, there are two ways of loading our raw data. We can either code it, so write the code and then send SQL to a location, pick up the file and then store it in a new table, or we can do it manually ourselves by clicking. So I'm going to show you how to do it manually first, and then I'll show you how to do it with the code. I always suggest doing it with the code, but maybe you want to quickly input a file in SQL, so you want to do it manually. But to do it manually, we need to right-click in our database, select tasks, and then select import flat file. Here we need to specify the location, which is this file over here. Now we need to add a table name, so I'm going to use underscores because we cannot use empty spaces. Then click next. This is throwing us an error, and it's because the file is already opened by Excel. So I need to come over here and then close the file and then click next. If I go back, I click OK, I click next. Now we can preview the data, and as you can see, we don't have any column names. And this is because I have manually opened the file. So this is going to be the file when you do download it, exactly like this, but I have manually removed the column names so I can bring the data in programmatically. So when you do download the data, if you want to import the data via import wizard, then you're going to need to leave the column names. So you have column names over here. But if you are going to do it programmatically, as I'm going to show you after, then you're going to need to remove the column names. The next thing we need to do now is that if we click next, we need to specify the data types. And these are the data types that we have covered at the beginning. This one's over here. So the first column is actually suggesting us to be datetime. And this is because the first column is actually a date. Then we have varchar, varchar, and then these should be integers. So if we check, we have nvarchar, nvarchar. It actually didn't put integers in these two, column 4 and column 5, but they're actually integers. So the issue here is that later on, when we try to apply calculations, so add the numbers together or average or mean or max, is not going to do it because these are actually characters. So what I'm going to do for us to be easier, I'm actually going to go back and select the file with the column names, which is this one over here, I think. Leave the name, click next. I need to close the file, which is this one over here. So we can see the column names and also change the data types. There we go, we have the column names, we click next, we leave this as date, we want to make the home score as integer, so we can select int over here, the same with the away score, so I can actually type it too, tournament, varchar, city, varchar, country, varchar, and then neutral, it's a bit, but I need this to be nvarchar too, so I'm going to copy this, and then paste it. I don't have any primary keys for now. I also don't want to allow any null values. I click next, I click on finish, and this has finished. So if I close this and then I refresh my database, so refresh over here, I should have a new table. And you can see the new table over here is the results 1872 and 2020. I can actually see if I have any data in it, so I can do select all from and then track this table and then run this. So you can see now we brought all the data that we had in Excel into SQL. Right, now I'm going to show you how to load the raw data programmatically. By the way, if you haven't clicked the like button, please do, because it does help me a lot. Right, so to do it programmatically now, the first thing we have to do is to create an empty table. So I've copied and pasted this. So to create an empty table, the first thing we have to do is to have this if object ID, the name of the new table, is not null, then drop the table. So what this query does is that it looks into our database if this table exists, and if it does, it's going to delete that table. So this is actually best practice because we can rerun this code as many times as we want, and it's not going to fail because every time it checks for that table, and if it exists, it's deleting the table. The next thing you want to do is to type in create table and then name that table. So I've actually named this table as football_data_2020, and then we want to define the data types for all the columns. So if I open the raw data file quickly, which is this one over here, what I do is that I start with the first column, so date. I go into SQL, I name this column as date, and then I specify the data type. I gave it as nvarchar. Actually, we can put this as date, but I have a reason why I put it nvarchar. I'm going to show you later on. Then we have home, away, and then home, away scores. So if I go back into Excel, you can see we have home, away, and then home, away scores, then tournament, city, and then country, and then neutral. So it's exactly how we have it in Excel. So when we run this code, it creates a new table, but because I haven't selected all of it, it throws me the error because it said that this table already exists. So if I refresh this and then tables, you can see this table already exists. So every time I have to rerun this, it needs to be run with this if object ID at the top. You can see now it worked. And what this did is that it created an empty table. So if I do select all from, and then this table, you can see it created an empty table. The next step now is to point SQL to the location of the file and then feed the data in. So to do this, again, I'm going to copy this code we have over here and then paste it down here. You need to type in bulk insert and then the name of the table. And then from and in from, you need to give the path of the CSV. So to get this path, you go into your Excel file location, you right click onto your file, and then you can copy the path from, where's the path? Details. There we go. So this is my path. So you can copy this, paste it into SQL over here, and then at the end say with, and then specify the format, which is CSV. So if I run this now, execute, you can see it affected 42,000 rows. And if we count the number of rows we have in this file, by the way, I forgot to mention, now I'm using the file without the column names. So you can see I don't have column names, and this is because I have specified the names in SQL. And if I count the number of rows, you can see over here we have 1078. So here we have 10. Oh, actually we have a lot more. What have I done wrong? Oh, this is the wrong file. So sorry, if I go back, this is actually the file. So let's count the rows of this file. It says, there we go, 42003. So in SQL we have 42003. And the benefit of doing this programmatically, so this way versus the manual way, is that we can rerun this as many times as we want. So you can see here, it's throwing me an error because the file is open again, sorry. So if we close the file, so we can run this as many times as we want, and we are not going to get an error. So when new data comes in, we can actually run this code versus having to right click, delete the table, and then right click here, task, import flat file, then specify the data types again, specify the location. So this actually takes time. So for automation purposes, it's better if you learn how to load data in SQL this way versus doing it manually. Right, the next thing we have now is to go through the select statement. So if I copy this quickly and then paste it down here. So one of the things you're going to be doing a lot as a data analyst and a data scientist is investigating all the tables in the databases. So to do this, the simplest way to do it is by viewing the whole table. So select all, the star, from, and then the name of the table. So this is actually the name of the table we've just created and inputted the data. So if I run this, it means that it's going to select the whole table. So if I make this bigger, you can see this is the whole table we had in Excel. If I go back, another way of doing it is by manually specifying all the column names. So here you can see that I have select, the date, the home team, the away team, the home score, then all the columns from the name of our table we just created. Another way of doing it is by selecting less columns. So for example, maybe you only want to see the date, home team, away team, and then the scores. You don't want to see anything else. So we can delete this. And then if I run this, now I'm going to see specific columns. So only the columns I specify. Now we can start adding some conditions. So maybe we want to limit the data based on category, for example. So I'm going to copy and paste a few examples here. So example 1 and example 2. So in the first example, let's say we want to see all the data where the home team equals England. So what this is going to do is that it's going to go through every single row in this table, and if the home team, so this column, is England, then it's going to return the whole line. Otherwise, it's not going to return anything. So if I run this quickly, select all from my table where home team equals England, you can see that we only have data now where the home team equals England, nothing else. So if we check the number of rows now, we have 503 rows versus the whole table, which is about 42,000. The next condition I have, maybe we want to see data where the tournament is not friendly, because when we run this quickly, we see a lot of friendly games. So maybe we don't want to see the friendly games. So the way to do this is by saying select all from our table where different column now, not the home team, tournament, it's not friendly. So if I run this now, we are going to see all the tournaments apart from friendly tournaments. So if we go through the whole data, you can see here, you are not going to see a friendly tournament with this query. The next thing we have now is maybe we want to investigate all the distinct tournaments in our dataset. So to do this, we can say select distinct tournament, this, from our table. And what this is going to do is that it's going to return a list with all the distinct, so the unique tournaments we have in this dataset. So as you can see, there are a lot of tournaments over here. The next condition we have is the in or the not in. So to do this, if I copy this quickly and paste it, maybe we want to select multiple countries, not just one country with the equals we had over here. To do this, we can type in open brackets and then specify multiple conditions. So what this is going to do, if I run it quickly, here under country, so country over here, it's only going to have the countries we have specified, because we said country in Scotland, England, and Wales. So you can see in country, we only have Scotland, England, and Wales. We are not going to have any other country. On the contrary now, maybe we want to see everything apart from these countries. So instead of having in, we can type in not in and then run it. So this is going to show us every other country in the dataset apart from these three countries. So we're actually excluding countries now. Next, we are going to show the like operator. So if I copy this and bring it over here, maybe we want to search the whole table where the tournament is like, not is, like UEFA. So if UEFA exists anywhere in between these tournaments, so this text, then it's going to return it. So if I run this quickly, you can see anything that has UEFA, you can see UEFA in this string comes back. However, maybe we want to search anything with the tournament ending with UEFA. To do this, you need to add the percentage at the beginning and leave this percentage at the end empty. So anything that's ending with UEFA, it's going to come back in this query. And as you can see, there is no tournament ending with UEFA. But if you want to search anything that's starting with, then you need to add the percentage at the end. So if I run this, all these tournaments, they start with UEFA. And if I want to select the distinct tournaments that have UEFA in between, we can do something like distinct and then say tournament from our table where the tournament is like UEFA. So if we select this, you can see that we have UEFA Euro qualifications, and also UEFA Nations League. Maybe we want to check the FIFA ones. So if we do this, so we have the FIFA World Cup, the qualifications, and also the 17th anniversary cup, which I don't know when this was. Actually, we can check it. So if we want to check this, we can do select all from our table where tournament equals, and then select this over here. So this is going to give us anything that has the FIFA 17th anniversary, and you can see it was between Argentina and the Netherlands in 1979. I don't know. Right, next we want to do the not like. So this is self-explanatory. It's exactly the opposite between this like. We can add not like, and it's going to select everything from this table apart from tournaments that have UEFA anywhere in between tournaments. So if I select this here in tournaments, we have selected all of them apart from anything that contains UEFA. Next, we are going to show the bigger and also the smaller. So if I copy this and then I paste it down here, this is selecting everything from our table where the home score is more than 10. So these teams have actually scored more than 10 goals, all of this data set. Sorry, I said teams, these countries, because these are only countries. And the same way we do home score more, we can do home score less. Now, the important thing here to notice is that these queries work because home score is actually defined as an integer up here. If we had home score as varchar, for example, this was going to fail because you cannot apply calculations on text. Next, we have the between condition. So if I copy this and paste it, maybe we want to search all the data set with home teams that have scored between 20 and 30 home goals. So to do this, we can say select all from our data where home score, this column, is between 20 and 30. So if I select this, you can see that all these games, so we actually have 6 games where the home team has scored between 20 and 30 goals. The next thing we have now is the end. So if I copy this and paste it, So the idea with AND is when you want to have multiple conditions and all of them have to be true. So here I have copied and pasted the home score more than 10, which is exactly this one. So copy and paste. And I also added another condition. I wanted the tournament not to be friendly, because maybe in friendly games you do score a lot of goals, but not friendly games is more difficult. So this is actually our first condition. We can also use the brackets if you want, if it makes you feel better. And then we can also add this bracket. So this is condition number 1, it has to be true, and this is condition number 2, and this one has to be true too. So if I select this now, it's going to return everything with the home score more than 10 and the tournament not being friendly. So all of these were not friendly games with very high scores. The next thing I have is the OR condition. So the difference between the AND or the OR is that one of these two conditions have to be true, and then we're going to see results, versus the AND, both of these conditions have to be true. The OR, one of these two conditions have to be true. So the home score has to be more than 10, or the away score has to be more than 10. So this is actually including all the away teams that have scored more than 10 goals. The next thing we have now is the AND or together. So if I copy this, I paste it down here. This is going to select everything from our table where our home score is more than 10 or our away score is more than 10. So it's exactly the same query as above, but in one bracket. So what I've done here is that I have removed this. So this is one of our OR conditions. And I also wanted to take this query and also exclude all these friendly games, because you can see we have a lot of friendly games with high score. So what I did is that I have continued from here and said, and the tournament is not friendly. So this has to be true, but for this one of these two has to be true. So if I select this now, we are actually excluding all the friendlies and we only have high score games, so more than 10 goals. Right, so these are a lot of the conditions you will be using day to day as a data analyst or a data scientist. You will want to investigate the data and add all of these conditions so you can summarize the data in a way that is going to make sense for you or the business. Right, moving on, the next thing we are going to show are the subqueries, which is a bit more advanced conditioning. So to do this, we need to load the other Excel file we explained at the beginning, which is the countries data. To do this, I'm going to use the programmatic way I have just shown you. So we are going to define all the columns. So do I have the file open? I think this is it. So country, region, population, area, country, region, population, area. So I have listed all of the column names and then I have given them their data types based on their data type in Excel. So text, which is nvarchar, or varchar. Then this is integer, this is float, and then this is float, integer, float, etc., etc. By the way, what I did is that I have downloaded all of these and I have done select all, so Control A, Control Find, then replace, and then I have replaced the comma with the dot. Because if you have comma there, so if we click on replace all, so if we had comma like we had before, if I go back, SQL is going to add that comma as a text and not a number. So there is a way to fix it in SQL by bringing it in as a varchar and then replacing, but because we are like beginners now, I have done this manual fix. You can download the file from my GitHub repo. Right, going back in SQL, we've shown this before. all we have to do is run this code, which is going to create this empty table. So you can see an empty table, and then we run this code, the bulk insert. We've explained this before. Is going to go into this directory and search for this file, and it's going to input it into this countries data table. So if we select all now, you can see that we have, actually let's refresh the database. So right click, refresh, tables, you can see we have the countries data, and you can see we have country data now. So we can start our subqueries. So the first subquery I'm going to do is that I want to select all the data from this table where the country is actually a European country. So to do this, we are using subqueries, as we said. And what's a subquery? First, we need to specify our subquery into these brackets, and you can have multiple subqueries within subqueries, but we're going to stay with 2 now. What this is doing is that it's selecting all the countries from this new table where the region, so this region is like, we have explained like Europe. So if I run this now, all these countries, unique, distinct countries, are European countries. And now I want to select everything from my football data where the country is in these European countries. So if I select this now, all the data we have back has country here as a is a European country defined from that other table. So I'm using a subquery from another table in order to filter this table. Another example now, let's do this, is that we want to select all the countries with a population more than 100K. So again, we need to write our subquery first, and then if I run this subquery, it's selecting distinct countries from our table where the population is more than 100K. By the way, this list, when we have in, should only have one column. If I add the population too, so if I do this, so now we have both the country and the population. So you can see the population. If I run the whole query with the subquery, it's not going to work. It returns an error because it's saying only one expression can be specified in the selected list. So into this list, we only are allowed to have one column. And that one column needs to be the column corresponding to this column over here. Next, maybe we want to have a subquery from our own table, right? Because maybe we want to select all the games that happen in the max date. So to get the max date, I will show the max later on, but I'm actually selecting the max date from the same table, from football, and it's telling me that the max date is this 31st of December 2018. Actually, this is not the max date because we have set this as bar chart, so ignore it. But what this subquery now is going to do is that it's going to select everything from our table, so from this table where the date is, and then I'm selecting the max date from the same table. This is useful because maybe you want to have a query that always selects the latest games and we want to program it this way. So this is where this subquery is going to be useful. So these games happen on the max date. Next, the next example we have is maybe we want to select all the countries that ever participated in a UEFA game. To do this, again, we are going to use a subquery from the same table. So first, I select the distinct home team, so all the countries basically, from the table, so our main football data table, where the tournament is like UEFA. So this is going to create a list with all the teams that have ever participated in a UEFA game. And now I can select all the data for those teams. So select all from our table where the home team is in these UEFA teams. Right, I'm gonna stop this tutorial here and finish the rest of this tutorial in the next video, as we have already went over time. So in the next video, we are going to cover the if and the case statements. We are also going to cover the rename, update, replace, insert into, delete, create new columns. Then we are going to cover the aggregated functions, so sum, average, min, max, and count. And at the end, I'm going to cover the joins. So how the joins work, left join, inner join, full join, cross join, and unions. Right, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've gained enough value out of this tutorial. If you feel like you did, then please click that like button, subscribe to my channel, and enable notifications for my future videos. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'm going to see you in the next video where we are going to finish all of these SQL tutorials.